Hey everybody, this is Warren coming to you from the middle of the night in my living room. Had a lot of people ask me some questions about comments I made in class about MySQL and some of the things that we want to do with MySQL or might not want to do with MySQL. So I'm making this quick video. Hopefully it helps. A couple of things to understand that maybe not everybody's so clear on is that MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench are actually two completely different software packages. We use them to talk to each other, but they are discrete and separate applications. MySQL Server, and we're using MySQL Community Server, which means we're using what's in the public sphere and is free open source software and not commercially licensed software in that we're paying for it, is a database server application in a family of products broadly known as relational database management systems. And it is server software, so that means it's not going to have an auto update channel and prompt you to update it as bugs are found and there's security problems and all of those new versions. Usually with server software, servers have very complicated configurations and you don't want them to update without server administrators being heavily involved in that process because it makes for brittle and unstable systems. So anytime you're installing server software, keep in mind that you probably, it's going to be a manual update process. And if you want to keep your computer secure, you need to have some way to either mitigate that or keep it updated. So keep that in mind. And then MySQL Workbench is actually a separate standalone application that we're also installing, and it allows us to have a graphic user interface to interact with MySQL servers. It's a really powerful tool. It does a whole lot of advanced stuff, but for our ISM classes, by and large, we're using it just as a graphic tool to do ad hoc queries to interact, so we can type in SQL and tell it to execute and get some data output. We delve into a little bit of modeling and doing entity relationship diagramming tools, which is kind of nice, and we use it to interrogate some table structure, but by and large, it's just a graphic user interface. So it's a separate program and it's communicating over a network connection to your MySQL server. So we know that the MySQL server doesn't automatically update, and you can look at how many versions there are and how actively there are releases for it, and there are security vulnerabilities. So maybe you might not want to run that MySQL server all the time when your machine is running. For our development purposes, you can set your MySQL server to start up manually instead of automatically. If you're on a Windows machine, the way you would do that is to go to your services, and I right-clicked on the Start button, or used to be known as the Start menu, but it's the Start button now. And you can go to Computer Management. You will need administrative privileges. So if this is your personal computer, it's probably not a problem, but if you're using like a work machine, you'll want to coordinate this action with your IT administrators. You can expand your services here under Services and Applications. And when you select services, you're going to see exactly that, a list of all of the services. And this is software that's running on your machine, or it being able to, it's installed on the operating system level so that it can run non-interactively. So that means the software runs whether a user is interacting with it or not, or whether a user is logged in or not, is just running as part of your computer. So that's the difference between a service and an application. Usually in an application context, there's something going on the screen. We have a user opening it and closing it and interacting with it. Server services, they crank up and they run and they do their thing, and they're not expecting a human being to be interacting with them. And that's what services are all about. If you scroll down to the M's, you will see that there is a service installed for MySQL 8. And the default for this, which most people do, is for it to be automatic. And if we right click on this, because the rule of mousing is when in doubt, right click to check it out, you can go to properties and you can see that there are different startup types. And you can actually set this to manual. And I would advise everybody to strongly consider doing that, because if it's running all the time, not only is it increasing your security footprint, but it's also consuming system resources. And if you're not using the software, maybe you want that speed to be doing something else like watching Netflix or something productive, right? So you can set it to manual and then apply. And when we go back, we notice that it is now set to manual. And that means that it's not going to crank up unless you come back to this screen, right click again, and you can start and stop and restart the service. Mine is running right now. So I can click stop, and this is what it looks like. It gives you the standard Windows progress bar. If you right click and go to start, does the same thing. That's pretty much all there is to it. So I'm going to minimize that and then go to the other thing I wanted to talk about, where it's right now, MySQL Server is listening to all network adapters on your machine. It's listening to your local host or the network loopback address for software just running on your machine. And it's also listening by default on your network. And it's not a great idea because, like I said, when you're really putting a server into production, there's usually a long checklist of configuration stuff that you would do to harden that machine and to prepare it to be on the network and expose it. And we're not doing any of that. So you might want to turn that off. You can interrogate, or you can ask your MySQL server to show you its configuration variables by doing the command show variables. And if you just leave off the where clause, it'll show you all of them. But we care mostly, in fact, that might be a fun thing to do. I'm just gonna select those and Control X that and lightning bolt. By the way, Control Enter acts like the lightning bolt in MySQL. And see, there are all these different configuration parameters, and there are hundreds of them. So configuration of MySQL servers or any relational database management system server is a complicated thing. But the address that we care about is really the one on where it's listening. And if we ask it, you see how it says asterisk? Well, we know that asterisk is a character that means all. So we probably don't want it listening on our network address on our network so that it's broadcasting our computer everywhere. We probably just want it listening on our own computer. Well, there's a configuration directive right here, and it says bind-address. And I'm going to copy that to clipboard. And what you need to do is you just need to put it in MySQL's config file. And on Windows machines, that config file is located in the, by default, it's located in the program data section. And you can see that in that same property screen that we were right here. See where it says path to executable file? And see how it's calling the MySQL D for daemon, exe, and then it says defaults file, and it's telling you the location of that file. So you can get really crazy and configure it to have that file anywhere, but where the MySQL installer puts it is right there in program data. So program data is a hidden folder. So if you don't have your hidden folders turned on in Windows, you might want to do that. Just open Windows Explorer, go to View, and check this box right here for hidden. You can just toggle on and off your hidden items. And the other thing too is program data, not only is it hidden, but it's system level. So you need to launch your editor to work with that file as an administrator. So I clicked on the start menu and I just typed NOTE for Notepad. And I'm going to right click and run as administrator. And yes, I wish to run this app as an administrator. And now I can just go and open in that program data file. I'll start up here, program data. And then if I scroll down, there's a MySQL folder, and see how right now it's filtering only for text documents. If you switch that to all files, you'll see when we go into the MySQL Server 8 directory, there's a my.ini. This is the configuration file for your MySQL server. And you'll see that it's just a whole bunch of key value pairs. And we're going to go to the section of this that talks about the MySQL server itself, which is MySQL D. And I scrolled past it because I was busy talking. How unlike me. But there's a syntax here of brackets. And you see how this bracket right here is MySQL D? That means that these configuration directives are going to apply to the server component of the software. And I'm just going to paste in my bind address. And I'll save the file. And I have an asterisk by the name. When I click save, see how the asterisk goes away? I know that it saved it. And when I go back to my services, I'm going to restart that server because it's only going to, the server only reads that config file at startup. So we made a configuration change. We have to restart or bounce or hup. It's also known as a hup that server service for it to pick up that new configuration. And I don't ever want to, you don't ever want to trust it or believe stuff, right? Just you issue a command, you always want to interrogate and make sure that it actually worked. So I'm going to rerun my command. And you can see now, instead of an asterisk, I have 127.0.0.1, which is my local host or loopback adapter on the network, meaning that it's listening only to applications on this machine and not not opening port 3306 and listening for connections on whatever network my computer is connected to. So those are some key things to keep in mind and some things that you might find beneficial to do. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it works out well. And I'm going to stop recording now.